Choi, a young man full of potential, is on his way to a job interview at a major corporation. On the way, he calls his fiancée who wishes him good luck. But just then, tragedy strikes. He witnesses a man getting hit by a car right in front of him, and the man flies through the air and lands at Choi's feet. Desperately, Choi tries to help, but the man dies in his arms. This traumatic event shakes him so deeply that when he gets to the interview, he can't answer the simplest questions. Unsurprisingly, he's turned down for the job. Over the next 7 years, Choi struggles to find work. He takes on various jobs like being a laborer, waiter, and taxi driver just to pay off his debts. Meanwhile, his friends are building careers and families. Despite sending out countless resumes and going to interviews, nothing changes for him. But one day, he gets another chance. He applies to the same company where he interviewed years ago. The manager notices Choi's persistence and the many certificates and licenses he's earned over the years, and Choi leaves the interview feeling hopeful. However, shortly after, he receives devastating news. All of his investments have gone up in flames. In a fit of despair, he confronts the investor, breaking down his door in rage. The neighbors call the police, but it's too late. Choi realizes he willingly gave his money to a scammer. Distraught, he goes to his fiance's house, only to see her getting dropped off by a man in a fancy car. She notices him and offers him some money to get by, but Choi, filled with shame, tells her to forget about him, believing he's too much of a failure for her. Heartbroken, Choi returns home to find all his belongings thrown out by his landlord due to unpaid rent. The next morning, he receives a message informing him that he didn't get the job. This finally pushes him over the edge. In despair, he climbs to the rooftop, thinking about how his life spiraled out of control ever since that man died in his arms. Unafraid of death anymore, Choi steps off the edge of the building and falls. Just as he is about to hit the ground, his phone rings. It's his mother calling. Choi suddenly wakes up in total darkness. He removes a blindfold and realizes he's sitting in a chair inside an airplane. On a monitor in front of him, a stranger's face appears. Then, a mysterious girl shows up, reading a note he left behind. She tells him that he's dead, but she strongly disagrees with his belief that death is the answer to his pain. She transports him to a strange place, a tall tower where he can hear screams from below. She reveals herself as the goddess of death and tells him that he insulted death by taking his own life. As punishment, she throws him off the tower, sending him into a horrifying world full of monsters and blood. Choi screams and fights off the monsters, only to find himself back in the airplane cabin. The goddess of death tells him that as punishment, he must experience death 12 more times, each time in a different person's body. If he wants to avoid going to hell, he must survive in at least one of these lives. Choi tries to argue, but death disappears, and the plane suddenly starts shaking. In a panic, Choi grabs a life jacket, but the flight attendant calmly explains that it's just turbulence. The plane stabilizes, and Choi looks around, noticing how luxurious everything is. A strange glowing object appears, containing the memories and abilities of the person whose body he now inhabits. Choi finds out that he's now living in the body of the second son of the owner of the corporation where he once dreamed of getting a job. Overwhelmed by his sudden wealth, he decides to continue living this life. However, before he can enjoy it, the plane's engine explodes. Choi manages to fasten his seatbelt, but the flight attendant is sucked out of the plane. The aircraft explodes, and Choi dies in the flames. But instead of staying dead, he finds himself in a dark space facing a glowing door that leads to hell. The goddess of death sits nearby, loading a gun with bullets. She tells him that each bullet will kill him in a different person's body, and the glowing stone will give him the memories and abilities of each person. Choi doesn't understand how he's supposed to survive, but the goddess doesn't care. It's his problem now. If he doesn't succeed, he'll end up in hell. The goddess fires the gun, and Choi is suddenly falling from a great height. At first, he panics, pleading for help, but then the glowing stone appears. He learns that his new body belongs to a thrill-seeking athlete attempting a parachute, less jump into a specially designed net. Live on TV. The stunt is being broadcast worldwide, and if he succeeds, a sponsor will pay him a massive sum. With the glowing object giving him the skills of an athlete, Choi feels confident he can succeed, but tragically, he misses the net and crashes to his death in front of millions of viewers. Once again, Choi finds himself at the gates of hell. He's furious that he didn't even have a fair chance to survive. He begins to reflect on his life growing up poor, losing his fiancée, and never finding a job. But death mocks his complaints, telling him they're insignificant. She shoots him again. This time, Choi wakes up in the body of a teenager. As he adjusts to this new life, he notices one of his classmates watching a video of the athlete who died in the failed jump and laughing at his death. The glowing stone appears once more, and Choi learns more about the life he's now living. He lives with his mother, as his father has passed away. A hardworking woman does everything she can to support her son, but he hates going to school. The class leader bullies him constantly, and after one more beating, he decides to jump off the roof. Just before he does, Choi's spirit enters his body. Choi realizes that if he survives, he won't go to hell, giving him a chance to start over. However, the class leader demands that the boy bring him some milk, which angers Choi. Enraged, Choi grabs a chair and attacks the leader. But the leader's friends, including a tall and strong guy, rush to help and beat up Choi, while nobody steps in to help him. During class, Choi reflects on his situation and realizes he needs to win over the strong guy first. When Choi goes home, he looks around the poor apartment and remembers his mother, who raised him alone in poverty. Seeing another mother at dinner reminds him of his own, and he cries over the pain of loss. That evening, Choi gets a message from the class leader demanding money. The next day, Choi talks to the strong guy, who explains that the class leader is friends with the strongest 11th grader. This older student lets the class leader and his friends do whatever they want. At lunch, the leader bullies Choi again, but Choi pours noodles over his head in front of the whole school. Shocked by Choi's boldness, the strong guy remembers Choi asking him not to interfere earlier, and the leader, embarrassed, goes to the 11th grader for help. But the 11th grader is puzzled and asks why the leader can't handle a smaller classmate on his own. The humiliated leader tries to attack Choi, but the strong guy steps in, ending the leader's reign of fear. Even the leader's girlfriend chooses someone else, and Choi starts running regularly to get stronger, knowing he'll need to be powerful. One evening, the former class leader attacks him and kills him with a rock. Choi wakes up again, standing at the gates of hell. He gets shot in the forehead and is reborn in a new body. He finds himself tied to a chair with a sack over his head. The people holding him torture him with water, demanding to know where the girl and the money are. Just as they're about to hit him with a hammer, a glowing stone appears, and Choi realizes he's now in the body of a hitman. This hitman had once fallen in love with the boss's girl and helped her escape. He had hidden both the girl and 10 billion won that he had stolen from the boss, but got caught. Now Choi breaks free and fights off the thugs, turning off the lights to defeat them. Choi decides to find the stolen money to start a new life. When he opens the door, he finds himself inside a moving truck. He escapes on a motorcycle, but a chase begins. They corner him on a bridge, but Choi uses all his skills to escape, causing a huge accident. He races through the city on his motorcycle, but the pursuers don't give up. He enters a shopping mall, jumps into an elevator, and closes the doors just in time. They finally catch up with him on the roof, but Choi jumps into a pool to escape. The boss orders his men to find Choi, and he eventually arrives at a pier where a girl runs into his arms. When Choi tells her the money is on a boat with lanterns, she shoots him. Choi finds himself at the gates of hell again, facing death's laughter, but Choi isn't done yet, as he didn't reveal the exact location of the money. In his next life, he hopes to find it. After dying again, Choi ends up in a prison cell. His cellmates warn him to stay out of trouble because a dangerous murderer, a psychopath, will finish him off just 4 days before his release. When the psychopath enters the cell, Choi recognizes him. It's the same class leader who used to bully him. Choi attacks another inmate, but other prisoners pull him away. Suddenly, a glowing stone appears, and Choi finds himself in a new body. This body belongs to a young man who once dreamed of becoming an MMA fighter. However, his life took a turn when his mother fell into debt, and the fighter agreed to commit a crime for money. Being a minor at the time, he received a suspended sentence for running over a pedestrian. Unfortunately, during the trial, the victim passed away and the fighter was given a 2-year prison sentence. When the real culprit's lawyer approached him, the fighter threatened to expose the truth unless he received more money. Now, Choi tries to force a young prisoner to admit that he's not a feared murderer, just a teenage killer. The other prisoners, enraged by Choi's accusations, beat up the young killer. During a work session in the prison's workshop, a tragic accident occurs. While later, he catches the young prisoner crafting a weapon, and to teach him a lesson, pretends he can see ghosts. He tells the young killer that the victim will haunt him forever, driving the young man to a mental breakdown. As the day of his release arrives, Choi meets the lawyer who originally represented the real culprit. The lawyer offers him more money, but Choi, determined to live an honest life, refuses it. Afterward, Choi goes to a pier, finds the 10 billion won his past self had hidden, and takes it to a rented apartment where he makes plans for the future. That night, he dreams of his mother and wakes up in tears. Later, he receives a call from the mother of his new body. Choi promises to visit her and divides the money into 2 parts, one for her and the other he hides in a storage room at a station. Choi then goes to the area where the fighter used to live and is suddenly attacked by a man with a knife. Confused, Choi doesn't realize who stabbed him until the man says he's the father of the pedestrian who was killed. Choi apologizes and admits that he wasn't the one who hit his daughter, it was someone else, but he took the blame for the money. The man is bewildered and stops when they hear footsteps approaching, causing him to flee. Choi's prison friend arrives and unexpectedly reveals that he went to prison with the intention of killing the fighter. Now he's happy to have found him and tries to claim the bounty on Choi's head. And the friend stabs Choi, and as Choi dies, he regrets not using the money properly. His phone rings, showing his new mother's name. Choi finds himself face to face with death once again, but this time, he cries, remembering his mother. Death is disappointed in Choi's repeated failures, and Choi asks to be shot in his next life. Soon after, Choi is reincarnated into the body of a young man near a train station. He rushes to the storage room and manages to retrieve the bag of money just in time. Choi sees a poster of a model and learns from the glowing stone that this new body belongs to someone who works as a model, and he goes home, amazed by the luxurious furniture in the apartment. Soon, a friend of the model calls and invites him to a party. At the party, Choi realizes that he can't handle alcohol well and quickly gets drunk. The CEO of a company where Choi once tried to get a job shows up, and Choi tries to make a good impression, but he ends up fully indulging in the party. The next morning, his older brother wakes him up, reminding reminding him that they have a cafe to run. When his brother leaves, Choi takes responsibility for managing the cafe. On that same day, Choi is stunned when his fiancée from his past life, Gil, enters the cafe. He recalls how they met when she lost several pages of her first book. His brother notices Choi's awkwardness and informs him that Gil is now a famous writer. Choi does some research and finds out that her novel recently won a cast and was dedicated to her favorite person. He realizes that the envelope he found before jumping from the roof must have contained her prize money. Feeling emotional, Choi leaves to find her book. As he reads it, he realizes that it's based on their shared experiences. He remembers telling her that no one would cherish her more than he would, and he had promised never to leave her. In the cafe, Choi recalls that he promised to gift her a fountain pen after her book was published because she believed every true writer should have one. He had bought the pen and had it engraved but never gave it to her. Then, the man Choi saw outside Gil's house approaches her, but now he's with his family and introduces Gil as his sister. Choi realizes he had misunderstood the situation. The next day, Choi meets Gil with her favorite tea and asks if he can tell her about an idea for a new book. He shares a story about someone who experiences a series of deaths, and Gil is fascinated, commenting that his narration feels incredibly real, and she asks for the hero's name, but Choi simply requests her autograph instead. Suddenly, he notices that Gil is holding the very pen he had bought for her. It turns out that his mother had given it to her. From that day forward, Choi meets with Gil regularly, telling her stories about his hero and what he's been through. Gil is amazed because everything he describes sounds so vivid and real. One rainy day, Choi gives her a red umbrella before heading back to the cafe. There, a waitress accidentally breaks a glass, and as Choi helps clean up the mess, he cuts his hand. Moments later, police sirens can be heard outside, and some girls in the cafe mention accident victim. Choi rushes to the scene and is devastated to see the broken red umbrella lying on the ground. He started shouting when he saw Jae Sai shooting on the other side of the street. The girl witnessed this but stayed to bandage his hand and talk to him. She realized that the guy was scared for someone important to him, just like she had been when she learned about her beloved's death. As a farewell, she told him she wouldn't visit anymore because his stories reminded her too much of her own pain. Later, she went to Choi's grave, crying in front of his picture. Choi watched this from afar, waiting until she left. After she was gone, he approached the shelf with ears, and Choi's mother found him there. Hearing her cry, he broke down too, desperately asking for forgiveness. Later, he wrote a letter to Choi's mother, pretending it was from Choi's friend, and placed it along with some money in a bag, which he then gave to the woman. The next day, he met Ju-yu again and shared more of his story with her. She found it fascinating and allowed him to walk her home. While they were walking, she expressed hope that his story would have a happy ending because she felt sorry for the main character. He remembered how, in the past, she had introduced him to her colleagues without caring that he was just a waiter. She had always considered him hardworking and handsome. She meant the world to him, but he had never told her that. He had believed she would cope with his death, but now he wanted to apologize for misunderstanding her. He admitted that she was the only one he would ever love. He blamed himself for not realizing that there were people around who would stand by him, sharing his moments of sadness and joy. He explained that he ended up in this body through the will of the goddess of death and revealed his true identity, Choi. Just then, a car suddenly hit them. With fading vision, he saw the director of a corporation step out of the car, angry about his damaged bumper. Choi recognized the man instantly. This was the same person responsible for the airplane crash that killed his brother to remove a competitor. He had also later, the police and doctors cleaned up the scene of the accident. Choi found himself on the brink of hell, vowing to destroy the evil man. In a final act of defiance, he grabbed a gun and shot the goddess of death. Subscribe for popcorn. We are racing towards 1,000 subscribers.